Dashiell Miller here from Warrior Concepts. We're here with this week's Whiteboard Wednesday, right? So if you want to give yourself the greatest advantage beginning at the onset of your defensive action, starting with your blocking, parrying, and attack receiving skills, then you're in the right place. Welcome to this week's Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday, where we'll be looking at a huge problem holding many serious students back from the kind of skill proficiency they're looking for and how to approach your training from a better perspective that not only greatly expands your skill sets, but gives you the ability to more effectively control a dangerous situation and take control from the attacker long before he ever realizes he lost it, right? This is something I picked up from teachers. One of the first lessons I got as a white belt, right? The ninja doesn't use overt control. While certain things can look like overt control, right? The idea is that we're actually taking control away from the attacker, from our opponent, long before that person ever realizes that they lost it. The moment somebody realizes that they're losing control, they apply resistance or they take defensive action, consciously, unconsciously, subconsciously, whatever. Okay. So really, really important. All right. So got my trusty handy dandy notes for you. We got a lot to cover in a short amount of time, but I want to make sure that everybody's getting as much as they need to. And again, whenever I do these episodes, I'm trying to teach to multiple levels at the same time. So, you know, if we hit a point where, you think you know that, okay, or you actually know it, right? Try to not let your brain lull into a boredom kind of thing, because the next thing I say might be for intermediate or advanced people, okay? So be careful, right? Control the mindset. All right, so anyway, again, I'm Dashiell Jeffrey Miller. For those of you new to this, right, I'm the master instructor of Warrior Concepts International and the Bujinkan Mori no Tora Dojo here in East Central Pennsylvania, here in the United States. Warrior Concepts, where we teach serious warrior-minded hero protectors the time-tested and proven lessons for creating the life they've always dreamed of living and giving them the skills necessary for protecting that life from anything that might threaten to harm it or actually come at it in an attempt to harm it. All right. So again, today's episode of Whiteboard Wednesday, we're going to be focusing on the concepts of blocking, parrying, attack receiving, that kind of thing. We're going to be doing it from the perspective, and this is really, really important, right? We're going to be doing it from the perspective of receiving and neutralizing the force of his attack. Okay, receiving and neutralizing, right? So I know bunch of months back, I did an episode on this idea of uke nagash, okay, which is a general term thrown around in the Bujinkan, but it's come to become like a box, right? That everybody just throws things that it's not that they're not in the ballpark, right? But they're actually different aspects, okay? There's also another episode that I did way back in the beginning, right? So if you're on the channel, right, on YouTube channel, and you go to the live kind of things, or you go to the little category that I created for Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday, right? You want to go all the way back, right? First couple of episodes, we did I did an episode on this idea from the Gilko school on 3 and 1, 1 and 3, right? So anything that we're working on should be broken down into at least 3 different aspects, so we have a broader understanding of it, right? But then again, there's also the ability to look at 3 or more different techniques, skills, ideas, or whatever, and find the unifying principle or concept that makes those things work, so that we're not getting attached to the thing, right? The thing. All right. So anyway, again, I'm going to keep referring to my notes because I don't want to miss anything. I don't know. It took me probably 10 minutes to write out 4 pages for you. So anyway, so again, I don't want to miss anything. I want to make sure you get as much stuff so that the do-it-yourselfers can immediately start applying this stuff to the training. And for other folks that might want additional help, right, they might realize that, okay, while given enough time, I could figure this stuff out for myself. Given the nature of violence being random and I don't know when it's going to happen, maybe I don't want to wait until someday. And so anyway, so, all right. So again, but let's start with the problem, right? Let's start with a problem that's getting in the way for most practitioners, okay? And again, I'm not singling anybody out, right? If you read yourself into this, I didn't write it for you, but if you see yourself in it, take appropriate action, right? It's what all good students do, okay? So the problem is that everyone tends to lump several different concepts into a category of one, okay? So this is the case, same case for blocking, receiving attacks, and other related but different tactics and skill sets, right? And we're going to talk about some of those today, okay? So, but there's also a problem behind the problem, right? People tend to think two-dimensionally, right? So they tend to look at a problem and they try to solve that, but what's causing that, right? There's a problem behind the problem. Just like, you look at an advantage, right? If let's say you're registering for a seminar, or you're buying an online training program, or whatever, right? Okay. So they list all these advantages, right? All these benefits that you're getting. Okay. Great. What are you going to be able to do with those? So what are the benefits of the benefits, right? The problem, especially in ninjutsu, is that people tend to think too statically and they're not thinking broad enough, right? The more of these things you can take into account, the more you start solving for the problem that creates the problem, that eliminates the problem, right? And you see past the benefit, right? For most people, the benefit is, well, I'll have these skills. Great. In what situations or under what conditions are those skills most appropriate? What are the benefits of the benefits? Okay. There's also secondary benefits. Okay. All right. So anyway, so they tend to lump things into the same place, right? So the problem behind the problem here is that we may think about any given topic, whether it be blocking or combat postures, I don't know, how to make an omelet, whatever, right? The way we think about it, we immediately create a limit for ourselves that controls the way we think, the way we plan, the way we train, the way we research, and ultimately the way we act regarding that thing. So whatever that definition is, creates the official way. And anything else, it's not that everything else is wrong, because some people consider themselves open-minded and they try to be, right? But we're talking about on a subconscious, unconscious level. This is the definition, right? So therefore, I don't even know I need to look over here, right? Here's a quick example. I was in Japan one time, right? Not too many years ago. I was in Japan and I had somebody running the dojo for me, okay? Just doing an okay job. I get back, right? And we've got this little area at the front near the counter that, because we do like Chinese New Year's parties and student get-togethers and gatherings and all that, right? Has a sink and cabinets and a secondary counter and all that kind of stuff, right? And I keep my Keurig. I keep my coffee maker back there with all my little accoutrements and all that. And staff's allowed to use it. No problem, right? Well, I come back and the counter has all kinds of freaking coffee stains on it and stuff like that, right? Now, before you think that I'm just being anally retentive and I clean too much, here's the thing, right? I noticed it, but I truly believe, and again, the conditions in which we put ourselves or what is normal for us can actually make us not notice things that like are right in front of our face, okay? So I go to forgiveness pretty quickly, right? So there's a momentary irritation, but then I had to think, perhaps he couldn't see them, right? And we're not talking about minuscule little things, right? It took me a good couple of minutes to clean this whole area and put things back in place and things like that, right? But I truly do believe, right, that based on someone's normal, they can't see things that are right in front of their face because it doesn't stand out, okay? That's the same for our training, right? If you look at a kata for the step-by-step mechanical pieces, right? And I look at you and say, great, what is that hand doing? I didn't even know I was supposed to pay attention to the hand. I just know that it goes right here because that's our style. What's it doing? Why did past masters in their enlightened wisdom who had survived combat again and again on a battlefield choose to place the hand here in the kotoryu? Why is it like this in the Kukishinryu, right? Why is it in a different place, right? Why, right? So again, until we start looking, until we start recognizing that whatever baseline we establish for ourselves creates limitations and it creates blind spots, we're not going to know that we aren't supposed to look at certain things. We're not going to know that something right in front of us is uber important. Okay. So anyway, again, it automatically creates a limitation. Okay. So, and this is no different with the idea of blocking, right? Or blocking an attack, right? This is this common word. So common that after a certain point, and I'm thinking mid to late 80s, I don't even think it made to the early 90s because I started training in 1980, right? The Japanese actually started using the word blocking, the English word blocking, all the time because that's what all the Westerners were doing. Just like they started using 11th Dan, 12th Dan, 13th Dan, and all that kind of stuff because that's what all the Westerners were doing, and it became easier to communicate with them. Even though the ranks are Judan, 10th Dan, Chimenkyo, Judan, Suimenkyo, Chudan, Kamenkyo, right? But it's just another example, just like the dictionary getting modified every year, right? It's just an example where the ignorant or misinformed get to lead the way, right? So anyway, right? So again, I'm going to be covering one of these things, but we're going to look at this idea, right? And one of these aspects is uke nagash. Again, way back, I did an episode on uke nagash, broke through the whole blocking thing again. This is not the same. It's not our same rehashing. So I'm going to touch on the uke nagash more briefly than any of the other ones during this episode, because you've got another one that you can go back and refer to. Okay. And if we remember it during the post production setup and all that kind of stuff on YouTube, we'll try to make sure the links are in there. But if it doesn't make it in there, let's pretend that we're all training to be ninja. Primary skill of a ninja is what? Information gatherers. So we're actually going to take the extra 30 seconds and go look for the freaking thing instead of bitching and complaining because somebody didn't make it easy like a drive-up window system. Okay, fair enough. And if any of this stuff irritates people and I'm not your cup of tea, you know where the back button is. Okay, again, I'm a little hot because somebody just posted about how I only care about money and if it were you should be giving this stuff away for free because people need it and all that. You know what I found about free? On one side, free has no value. It's zero. Because it costs zero, people take it much more lightly, right? And two, people who want free, it's never enough. They want the next thing free. They want the next thing free. They want the next thing free, right? Instead of figuring out how they can arrange or barter or whatever, how to make that happen like a truly success-oriented person, right? They just assume that, again, here's that definition, including definition of me. My definition of me, if it's static, it causes me to think, act, plan, interact with other people a very specific way. Okay? So anyway, right? So before we jump into the three aspects of this whole uke, receiving kind of thing, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And if you didn't notice that there was an elephant in the room, I'm going to point out the elephant in the room. Okay? It can be pink if you want it to be, but it doesn't have to be, right? The elephant in the room is that what most people want, right, from their martial or their self-defense training, we need to talk about this, right? What they want and how to define that thing in a way that we can actually work on it logically, effectively, and in a way that produces the result we're looking for, okay? People think about, and I don't care if you use the words fantasize, dream about, whatever, they envision being able to handle a threat or an attack that's coming at them quickly, easily, the way they need it to happen, and all that kind of stuff, right? But once they get into training, they put blinders on, right? If it's outside our style, I'm not looking at it. What's the official way? Is this right? Is this not right? Right? There are things that make it right and not right, but it's not necessarily rarely what people think it is, okay? So again, everybody wants to be able to handle whatever attack comes at them, right? Quickly, easily, that kind of stuff, right? But they act differently, okay? So here's a quick story about a student I had a bunch of years ago. He went on to go into the military. He actually started as a teenager, and he had 8 years of Taekwondo or some other martial art behind him before he got involved in what we were doing. And so anyway, he and some friends were coming out of the mall one night, right? One friend was old enough to drive, so drove all three of them, right? They park, they go hang out at the mall, they come out, and there are these two guys sitting on the friend's car, right? So my guy's he's 17 at this point, right? Doesn't have his license, doesn't have a car yet, right? But, right? Here are these two guys sitting on his friend's car, right? Of course, the friend, because it was a nice sports car, right? The friend says, "Get off my car," right? These two guys jump off the car and immediately go into attack mode, okay? So now, we got three of our guys and we got two of these guys, right? People that are mathematically oriented would think that, well, we've got the advantage. You haven't been in a fight, okay? One guy pulls a knife, right? So my guy, Nate, who's been training with me for quite a while, right, has all these frameworks and all that kind of stuff, right, decides he's going to take the guy with the knife and leave his two friends to easily handle the other guy, right? So he shifts in a way that the fight's going to happen in a way that the blade isn't going to accidentally or on purpose interact with his friends, okay? You get the idea, right? Anyway, long story short, because I've told this in the past, you can find this story somewhere else, right? Nate said that things were happening in such a way and in the order that the frameworks show are going to happen, right? That at one point he almost laughed because he knew what the guy was going to do next, and he was already prepared for it. He was controlling distance, he was controlling angling, he was controlling this guy's options, that kind of thing. It started to become so easy that he almost laughed, okay? I think that's what most people are fantasizing about. That's what people want when they get involved in training, right? And one of two things happens. They either get caught up in the minutia, right, or the style, or they find out that it's harder than they actually want to put into. And then they wander off into the world and they have things like, well, that wasn't really my cup of tea, okay? As this one mentor, I just heard him quoting during a lecture. He said, "Is it really not your cup of tea, or are you just too lazy to actually put in the time, effort, and energy?" Okay, so anyway, and of course, people that have a certain personality type, of course, they're never going to admit that it's them, and they're not willing to put in the energy. Okay, it's just, well, that's not for me. Well, of course not. It didn't come from a drive-up window. Anyway, back onto this, right? So when I'm talking about this goal, right, I'm not talking about a sport-oriented fighter, right? One of these people that's willing to get into something and the martial art that they choose or whatever, right, is really about being willing to trade shots or wrestle with someone for whatever time frame, right, to see who wins, right? It's about besting somebody else, okay? I'm talking about a survival situation, and I'm talking about being the kind of person where I'm not gambling my life or my family's future without me because I'm a competitive mindset kind of person. Okay. I'm telling you, I'm a very different type of person. Okay. So let's focus on that. That's the goal. All right. So let's focus on that. Right. So, and the fact that if you've ever been in a real attack scenario, right? If you're one of my guys that you're in law enforcement, right? So you're a cop, high-end security, and I don't mean like mall cop or whatever, right? Okay. Soldier, ex-gangbanger. I've got some of those, right? Whatever, actual victim of an assault, right? If you're one of these folks that you have actual experience, then you know that the more that we can make sense out of the chaos, okay, because you've got experience, it's not a fantasy thing. It's not a contrived, choreographed movie kind of thing. You know that inside that freaking bubble, right? If you don't know what to look for and you don't have any kind of sense of managing and assessing, it just, right? It's everything just seems like chaos, right? So if we don't have a way to make sense out of the chaos that the fight feels like, right, we're going to have a problem, right? So the more we can make sense out of it, the better off we're going to be, and the more things are likely to go in our favor, right? I say likely because it's violence. Shit happens, Okay. You could slip, no matter how skilled you are. You could slip, you could trip over something. He gets the advantage and kills you, or he gets in a lucky shot, or I don't know, you have a heart attack in the middle of it, whatever. Okay. So that's why I give my students something that we call the it's a 5-part framework, right? We call it the 5 phases or the 5 Ds of effective self-defense strategy. Okay. And I use the term phases and all that. I'm not going to go into it that briefly, but it's needed for the setup for this, because we need to know, we need to be able to answer certain questions. Okay. So the reason I'm not going into it that deeply, besides time, I keep pointing to a clock, right? Anyway, besides time, is because there's another Whiteboard Wednesday that goes into the 5 Ds. Okay. At this point, we've done so many of these episodes that they're becoming like puzzle pieces or gears. They fit together. Okay. And again, for anybody that thinks I only care about the money and whatnot, count up all the hours that of all the stuff that I put out. Anyway, all right. So again, I go into much detail with it, but again, I want to cover it here really, really quickly. All right. So let's do that. Right. So let's take a look at these 5 Ds. Right. Okay. You'll have the recordings later. Right. Go to YouTube, Facebook pages, wherever you happen to be looking now. But if you go to YouTube, you'll be fine. Okay. So we affectionately call it the 5 Ds because we've reduced what's going on to 5 words that all start with the letter D that kind of point in this direction, right? What you need to understand, especially if you're one of my students, long distance or here locally in the dojo, right? Here's another one of those problems that I keep seeing, right? People will memorize these things because they're going to come up on a test. I'm going to ask you, what are the 5 Ds of effective self-defense strategy? And people will rattle them off. And then during the test, I'll say, great, what are we doing at this stage? And they'll recite it. Okay, what are we doing at this stage? And they'll talk about the tactics or strategy and why we choose certain options. And what are we doing to the guy at this stage? What part of the fight are we controlling at this stage, right? But then I look at them in the dojo and I look at the mistakes they're creating when they're doing their techniques or whatever, and their body's not cashing the check that their mouth is writing. So they're approaching this stuff like Western academia, right? If I memorize it and write a paper about it, or I can answer questions about it on the test, I get the belt, right? But they can't actually do it because there's a disconnect, right? So let's take a look at these things very, very quickly, right? So there are 5 Ds. And again, we just need to get past this very quickly. The first one is discern. I think I added an extra S in there. I apologize, right? Discern, defend, disrupt, deliver, and I think it's discern. This is what happens when I learn Japanese, and Japanese is all syllables, and then all my years of being an English major go to hell in a handbasket, right? Anyway, so discern, defend, disrupt, deliver, discern, right? So what are we doing each one, right? Very, very briefly, the discern stage, if he's not on me yet, I want to pay attention to as many things as possible, right? If you watch this last week's Kuden podcast, all right, this week, right? On Monday, we talked about this Japanese martial concept of mind like the moon, right? So this ability to place your awareness on things equally so that you can gather as much information. And it's not so much that your left brain is paying attention, because your left brain can only pay attention to so many things at one time, right? It's so your right brain soaks it up, and the way it operates, right? Your left brain can't access it, but you start to get these intuitive gut level feelings and all that. It's because the information is in there processing, but it's not linear like left brain, okay? As I'm teaching these lessons, it's left brain. As I'm doing the lessons, as I'm defending or whatever, right? That's all right brain stuff, because you don't have the time, right? But I want to pay attention to as much stuff as possible, how he's holding his hands, his body stance, those kind of things, right? If I can, all the way down to his clothing, how well the shoes match the ground surface that we're on, whatever, right? Because all those things can help or hinder, but especially how he's holding things, because people are going to stand a certain way that come in this way. People are going to stand a certain way that come in straight, right? Could this guy swing this way? Yeah, but if he wants to punch me in the face by way of like 4 states over and take the long way, then shit, I'll take that as an advantage, right? Not for him, for me. Okay. So I'm paying attention. I'm watching him come in. If he's already on me, if he's already grabbed me, then I'm recognizing the force and where that pressure is, right? Okay. And again, at speed, this is all intuitive feel, which is why Hatsumi Sensei always said, you need to get the feeling. Okay. So, defend is not doing your moves. Okay. Defend very, very quickly is what I write up here for the uke stuff, right? Neutralizing the force of their attack. Okay. Neutralizing the force of their attack, right? What I'm doing is if they're shoving me, right, I'm neutralizing that so my balance doesn't break, right? If they're trying to punch me, I'm shifting to avoid or riding it off so that they either miss or it bumps me, but it doesn't cause any damage. It doesn't rattle my brain, okay? Disrupt is unbalancing, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, as many of those as I can make happen as possible. Awesome, okay? This could be anything from mental, what's mental? Mental unbalance. Confusion, right? Okay? So what unbalancing really does to the person is it puts them into a situation where they can't for a moment continue on the way they planned. Okay. This one just causes them to waste shots. Okay. Or whatever they're trying to do to me, drag me around or whatever, it's just not working. Okay. So this one's neutralizing their attempt. This one here, or this one is neutralizing the force that they're applying. This part right here is I'm actually stalling them, either physically, mentally, okay, that kind of thing, right? So this is what creates my openings, okay? People tend to like do this, maybe this, and then want to jump straight to deliver, which is where we're actually delivering our strikes or our locks or whatever, but they haven't earned it. Because if this guy's not fighting something else, his own confusion, gravity, whatever, then he's going to resist and avoid and counter and neutralize whatever the shit you're throwing at him, which is what looks like your typical fight. Looks like two cavemen in a sandbox, right? Okay, okay. So this is where we're actually applying things. We're knocking him down, back, whatever, right? And then the final discern is again paying attention, but it's an assessment this time to what was the effect of what I just did. Okay, is he down and out? Is he down, picking up and running off? In which case I might have to look over my shoulder for how long, right? Or is he coming back up and coming back in for something else, in which case this becomes number one for the next engagement, okay? So again, it's just a quick run through, right? Didn't do it nearly as much service. Go back and watch the other episode, right? But this idea of, and I'm going to use this term blocking, right? This thing we're talking about today, right, is actually in here, okay? It's in here, right? At the very minimum, it should be preventing him from harming me, right? Either through evasion or by disseminating pressure and power or whatever, right? At best, I'm doing this and breaking his balance at the same time or crippling him or whatever so that he's dead in the water, and then I can move in and do my technique with no impediment, okay? One of the master teachers that I train with on a regular basis, Trey Sensei, he would always say, you get to a certain point where you've accomplished this, right? And he didn't give me this framework. This is something that I got from a different teacher, and it got refined over time and whatnot, right? But if we get this part right here, he can't do anything, okay? What Trey Sensei would always say is, if you get this, you can smile, because all your troubles go away, because nothing's going to stop you from doing that. But as long as you have a fighter mindset, as long as you are trading shots, as long as you are wrestling, as long as you are trying to best somebody, that kind of stuff, right? Then this stuff isn't being managed, right? We're not fighting strategically, right? And so we're just trading shots. We're hoping for the best, okay? That's great if it's a trophy or a belt or whatever, and then I can talk smack about wanting a rematch or whatever. But when the consequences of failure are death or being maimed or whatever, right? The mindset has to be completely different, right? I apologize for that little thing there. I forgot to turn the sound off on my phone. Let me fix that so that you don't hear every time a freaking notification goes off. Boom, 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 boom. Solved. All right. So that's that, right? Okay. So again, the point is where today's topic fits in, okay? And again, we have to understand what it is that we're doing to them. Well, like I'm blocking. What does a block late into his attack, mid into his attack, or early into his attack do to him? Physically, emotionally, whatever. Where does it move his body weight? What am I doing to him? Okay? We have to think like a tactician or a strategist to understand this. If we're thinking from the perspective of a technician, where do I put my foot? What's the official stance? Whatever, then all this is going to sound like gibberish and bullshit, okay? Which I was just accused of earlier by somebody who their idea of setting themselves up as a martial arts master is comparing their skill set to somebody else's, but they can't keep a training group running, right? Because they don't know how to promote it, or they don't manage the things that need to be managed, right? To make sure that when a student signs up at white belt, you're still going to be around to give them their black belt. We've all been, I don't want to use the word victim, but we've all experienced that or known somebody who's experienced that, where they're moving along and then all of a sudden that training group or dojo just vaporized. Okay. So anyway, there's more. The point is there's more skill sets to running a dojo than just how good you are with your moves. Okay. Until you start doing it and you want to do it with a specified goal in mind, then when you fall on your face, you're just going to blame somebody else. Just like a 6-year-old. Anyway, all right, so back to the notes. All right, so again, the problem is that people tend to lump everything together, right? Just like the 5 Ds. People tend you can't control that kind of stuff, man. It's just chaos, right? Have you ever tried? Have you ever thought about it? Have you taken this framework, understood it, and then applied it in a randori or a sparring situation to understand how to recognize the phase that you're in, what's necessary, apply those things, whatever, right? The fact that it's not linear. I mean, it's linear, but they're not static steps, right? They're phases that the fight goes through, okay? And the cool thing about this, whether you want to believe it or not, right? There's lots of people that do it. They don't teach it, right? They teach different ways, but when you watch them, they're still doing it, right? So just because they don't have it, they're not teaching it, they're still using it, right? So the upside about these frameworks that I give students is not only do they work, but here's the downside. They work for the one who intuitively or consciously knows that this exists and they're the one using it, okay? So just like gravity, right? You don't have to believe in gravity, right? But if you don't have correct posture and your shitty footwork and all that kind of stuff, gravity's going to grab your narrow ass and pull you to the ground surface, whether you believe in gravity or not. Doesn't matter. Okay. All right. So, okay. The point is that this is karma in action, right? It's always karma, right? Cause and effect, right? Cause and consequences, those kind of things, right? So today we're going to take a look at 3 skill sets, right? I'm going to cut to the chase here. 3 skill sets, right? We're going to call them 3 uke skill sets. Okay. Again, go back and look at the uke and nagash because I break down the kanji for uke, for nagash, that kind of stuff, right? I'll just give you the brief cut for the other ones, right? Uke is the ability to receive, to disseminate, that kind of stuff, right? Just very, very quickly, right? So we're going to look at 3 types of uke, 3 types of receiving, right? So uke nagash, again, I did a whole episode. Go find it, right? Uke nagash, right? There is uke tome or dome, depending on how you're listening and how your ear's tuned, right? It's tome, but after uke, because of the way the mouth is formed, it'll often come out as dome, right? It's a Japanese linguistic kind of thing, right? So uke, tome, dome, that kind of thing. And uke uch, okay? So this actually comes from sword work, okay, or weapons work, right? As does all of our taijutsu, right? This art isn't just different from other ones, right? This art is inside out and backwards because instead of being unarmed stuff that we're going to add weapons to, all this stuff is based on weapon work, starting with long pole arms and then reduced to swords, and then reduced to shorter weapons and unarmed. Okay. So the reason why our kamae are the way they are and all that kind of stuff, right, all go to weapons work, right? So these, right, can all be found in sword work. This one in sword would be called uke giri or giri, right, which means cutting. This is striking, okay? Receiving stop, receiving flow, receiving dissemination, receiving it's like a flow or a continuity, okay? So, and then this one is receiving strike, okay? I often use the term, and I'll get back to this again, right? You'll hear me say counter strike, okay? Counter strike, counter kick, whatever, okay? Lost my cat. Anyway, all right. So uke nagash, uke tome, uke uch, okay? So these all come from and are reflected, again, in advanced sword work, right? So they all boil down to this idea of uke, of receiving, okay? Again, remember what I said at the very beginning, right? The Gyoko use 3 in 1, 1 in 3 concept, okay? So we've got this idea of receiving, and then we're going to break it into 3 aspects, 3 ways to receive. These are 3 skill sets that all kind of fall into the same category, but how you're receiving and what that receiving does to him, or under what conditions one of these things works better than another one, that's what changes, okay? The more we know, the more options we have, the greater our chances of success. But if we bundle it all up and we call it blocking, or we're always doing soft training and we don't understand how resistance can change things, right? Or the weight of his arm or whatever, right? And we're not letting those things happen, then, right, what will typically be the outcome is we will be uber confident in our skill sets until we're actually in that moment. And as the saying goes, pride will go before the fall, because everybody's got a plan and everybody's got confidence and arrogance until they get punched in the mouth. Okay. All right. So, but the difference is not in what you're doing so much as how each one makes a difference, or how each one is different. Okay. So anyway, again, we're going to be going into this stuff much more deeply during this Friday's virtual call. There's the link for those of you who have never done it before. We have this, Friday live class at the dojo, and Whiteboard Wednesday kind of determines what my guys are going to be working on that week, right? So anyway, right? So we're going to dive into each of these here very quickly. Okay, so let's start with uke nagash. Again, there's a whole video. You can go back, right? And you will see that the way I wrote that out, that hints at some of these things, but it's much more expanded, okay? So uke nagash, right? Let's see, if you're one of my guys, right? In module, we introduced this idea in module 2, right? And then it gets expanded on in module 3, 4, whatever, right? But on your curriculum, it's called a receiving arm, okay? So punch comes in, right? And what we're doing is we're clearing, but we're touching it, right? And we're picking up information from it and moving in a way that disseminates that energy, that power that they're using, right? But also controls them, okay? Because if I do it incorrectly, right, and I just lightly touch, but I haven't lifted the shoulder joint in the socket, that kind of thing, right? There's nothing to stop this guy, right? And you see it all the time, right? People will lightly do this thing. Like Hatsumi Sensei will do it because he wants to get past that piece, because he's retired now, right? But he was focusing on this next step. So when the person throws their hand out or their punch or whatever, he just kind of moves out of the way and puts his arm up against it, right? Because that's not the important piece that he's covering. He just gets to there, and then it's the next piece he wants you to focus on. But what people have done is they've watched Hatsumi Sensei do that, didn't understand what he was doing as a teaching model, and now that is their blocking uke nagash, which is shit. Because if you do that, this guy punches and your arm is in a weird place or whatever, there's nothing to stop him from shuffling forward and punching you in the face with the same arm you thought you blocked. Okay? So again, you can go back and look at that other video, but the whole idea with this is we are neutralizing the force of the attack while maintaining cover. Okay? While maintaining cover, right? The cool thing about this receiving, like in Tagagi Yoshin, right? You'll often receive this way where your arm is upside down. Okay? So I'm covering and I'm kind of riding it off, but it puts my hand in a place where I can grab the lacings in armor, or I can grab the muscle right here, or flesh, or whatever, right? And grab a weapon, that kind of thing, right? So again, it's the why it's there, not the what we're doing, right? Learn the what so you can learn the why, right? Anyway, so this is more of a riding off and neutralizing what's going on, okay? If you need to use terms like soft block, whatever, that's fine, right? But what I'm telling you now is all I'm going to cover right now is that, because there's an entire freaking video on Uke Nagash, right? It's called something like when blocking's not blocking or something like that, right? Okay. It's easy to find. Okay. Just like people want to kick my ass. I'm easy to find. Anyway. All right. So let's see. Uke Dome. Okay. Let's change this out because there's other things to write. Okay. So Uke Dome is the way the kanji would be written, or the kana would be written, but linguistically it's often pronounced dome. Again, for those my guys that are going through the curriculum in Mod 4, you have a kata called ashidome. Ashidome, right? Leg stop, right? It involves avoiding a kick, diving under, like kind of a Kukishin Moguri kind of idea, and then punching the inside of his kneecap so that you knock the leg out of alignment, and then his body weight and torque on the joints unscrew them as he collapses, right? So you don't break him, he breaks it, right? You just facilitate the requisite elements that allow him to break himself, okay? So kind of like we typically don't throw somebody the way a lot of martial arts do, right? We create a problem where the body will spring out of the position that it's in, or we create a situation where the body can no longer stand up or catch itself, right? So we use the term nage, or nagaru, throwing, that kind of thing, very, very loosely, okay? Because most people think it's like a judo, pick him up and whatever, right? But when he's wearing his body weight in armor on his freaking body, and you're wearing armor, or it's wintertime here in the Northeast and we're all walking around like freaking Eskimos and stuff, right? Yeah, good luck with that, okay? Anyway, all right, so what I want to say about Uke Dome, right? So Tome right here means stop. It means stopping or whatever, right? This is as close to the definition of blocking as the way most people think of it, of all of them, right? So if you want to think about blocking at all, it's Uke Dome, right? Uke Dome, right? So there are 3 aspects to this, okay? 3 aspects. Okay. All right. So we're receiving in a way that creates a barricade, shield, whatever you want to call it, right? Creates a wall. Okay. So with a sword, jamming, blocking, whatever, hanbo comes up, right? Catches them, right? Think karate blocking, that kind of thing, where you're stopping it from coming through. Okay. So it creates a barricade. Okay. We're doing it in a way that does not break our defense. Doesn't break our defense. Okay. What that means is it doesn't break the arm structure or whatever. Okay. Somebody's coming in fast and hard. You will know very, very quickly if your arm is in the wrong position, or the joints of your shoulder, elbow, hip, whatever are in the wrong place, because things will collapse. And if it doesn't collapse, like some part of you moves, and if your muscles have to fire to stop that from affecting you, you can't move, which is the third one, right? It still allows for freedom of movement. Okay? Blocking is one thing, but if you and him are locked in like these MMA fights, right? There was I think it was MMA number 3 or UFC number 3, way back in the day, right? Where one of the Gracies and this other guy, right? It became affectionately known as like the Gracie hug or something like that, right? These guys were locked in a fucking, excuse my language, YouTube, right? Locked in a hug, right? It wasn't a hug. They were locked in on a grappling situation, right? For damn near 45 minutes. Okay, this is before they had time limits and all that kind of crap, right? Because both of them knew that if they moved, it would disengage things and it would give the other person an opportunity. So they stayed locked in for God knows how long, right? Okay. Everything changed when one of them moved, and sure enough, right, it took place, okay? But these are 3 conditions for the uke dome, a block, to be a Nimpo, Budo Taijutsu kind of thing, right? It does create that barricade that everybody thinks of, right? It does not break your form, but you can put in a shit ton of resistance to not let your form break. But if your resistance or strength immobilizes you, it's not correct. Okay, just like with our kamae, right? If you're in a kamae and you can't move one leg or the other to step or kick without moving your torso first, your kamae is wrong. Not my words, my teacher's words when I was a white belt. Not my fault that nobody's teaching that anymore. Okay, so, all right, so that's uke tome. Okay, that's as close to blocking as we need. Okay, now with a sword or even with your arm, right? This could be, because we typically don't like do this kind of thing because we're both in the same freaking position where we're in contact. I stop that, but I'm wide open for the next thing, which is what allows for this block punch kind of crap to go on. Okay, so, but it could be just like with a sword, right? If he's coming in with a cut, right? I could get under it, right? In this Kasumi no Kamae, whatever, right? Because it's a last second. I'm not talking about the uke nagashi where he hits it and it glances off. Okay, that's uke nagashi. In this case, I'm blocking it, right, so that it stops, right? But I'm in a position. And again, there's a kata. I think it's a kukishinen kata, but I could be wrong. It's a sword kata. It's called kirisage, right? It means cutting down. Okay, age up, sage down, right? So kirisage, and the way the kata works is you both end up going at the same time with a kesagiri, right? You're cutting the kesa, right? And so what ends up happening is these swords come together at a diagonal like this, and it creates a stalemate situation because you both went at the same time. Okay, so that's an incidental uke tome, right? But it happens, and then what the kata is teaching through its primary model and the variations is how do I break that to kill him without taking a shot myself, right? You can learn the kata all you want. You can learn the variations, but if you don't understand the principal concept that makes them work, then any variation you make might work or might be right, might not. Okay. Anyway, all right. So, but that's a common thing, right? So we could do the barricade thing this way, or as it's coming in, right? As I'm going to make contact, right? I kind of bunt it, right? And move it, right? So it's a little bit of a strike, but I don't have the kind of positioning that allows me to actually like knock things away. Okay. So with sword work, I would use the side of the blade. I would use the spine, whatever, right? Just enough to clear, or if the spear's coming in or whatever, boom, just enough to clear it, creating a channel that I can then move in on and take them out. Okay. But what if I do? What if I have the ability and wherewithal, right, to punish that thing that's coming in? Okay. So uke uch. Okay. Uke uch, right? Receiving punch. It could also be a kick, whatever. Okay. It's a strike. Okay. A receiving strike. So I tend to call these things counter strikes. Okay. I'm punching the punching arm. I'm punching the kicking leg. I'm kicking the kicking leg, parrying it, whatever. Okay. So again, going back to parrying, that word parrying, right? That uchi dome, right? That little, okay, kind of a little moving off the way, right? Okay. If I slap something and it doesn't affect them, that wasn't a parry. That was me getting out of the way and doing a 3-year-old little whatever, right? But if I move in a way that bumps it, to create a little bit more movement on his side and create a bigger open window. That's the kind of parrying we're looking at, right? But uke uch, right? This is how uke nagash was introduced to me early on, right? Heavy on the kotoryu side, big heavy kind of things, right? So this guy throws a punch out there and I get out of the way and boom, I hit it in a way that boom, knocks his arm out away from me. Or I shift and use, it's called ken kudaki, right? Crushing the punch or crushing the fist. I get out of the way, punch it, right? To knock it away. So I'm punishing the incoming limb. He throws a front snap kick or whatever. I get out of the way, punch his femoral nerve. He puts his leg down in a very different place, opens up his woo-woo, and I kick it into his throat, give him a lump in his throat that he used to piss out of. Anyway, so, but this is very different, right? This is, some people call it hard blocking, whatever. It's not a block, okay? The block, the thing that stopped him from hitting me was the evasion. I got out of the way, and while he's busy missing, I'm going to punish this thing, right? This stuff forces you to stop looking at only the head and the body as potential targets. If he sticks something out there, he better be willing to give up that thing for the rest of his life. It's the general rule of the kukan, right? You don't stick it. There's a whole video on the kukan. You don't stick anything into the kukan, right? When you haven't disrupted him, right? If he's not off balance and you're free to do whatever you want, you don't put anything in the kukan that you're not willing to give up for the rest of your damn life, however long or short that is about to be. Okay, so uchiuke, all right? This counter strike, this receiving strike, whatever. Okay, so just like with the sword draw, it places the kisaki in front of his incoming fingers, right? Or another body part, okay? So this guy's coming down in a daijodan kind of thing this way, right? Sword's still in my belt, right? But as he comes in, right, I shift and draw and just put the weapon into a tate, into a guard position, right? In line with his fingers or his arm. So I don't cut him, he cuts himself because it's the nature of the blade to cut, right? So his fingers run into it and then these little freaking Vienna sausages drop off to the ground. Or he makes contact and it fillets the muscle up off his arm or whatever, right? And that causes things to start to collapse. So from right here, he runs into it, it locks him up, and then I can just finish off, right? It's that same idea. So just like with that, right? This punch or kick, right, is to the incoming limbs, but it could also be right to I tell my guys all the time, right? You have the kata. The kata has you doing uke nagash or, whatever, right? You're doing this strike, and then you move into his central targets, right? Assuming that the fight's not going your way just yet, and you need to open things. So the beginner model is I need to be way out here, and I need to do something that creates an open window. But the way a master tactician would do it is he's moving in, I'm going to shift off at the last second so his targets are way closer. So now I'm going to avoid the punch and punch him in the throat or the face or the gut or whatever at the same time. So it doesn't have to be the limbs, okay? Doesn't have to be the limbs, right? So there are two basic methods. Two basic methods for uke-uch, right? The first one is to move him, okay? So think Togakure Ryu, sometimes Koto Ryu, Kuki Shinden Ryu, uke-uch, uke nagash, whatever, right? It comes in and you're hitting it, boom, and you knock his arm out in the way, okay? You're going to move him. He's coming in with a kick, you get out of the way, hit that, right? And knock his leg to the side. It's like ashibarai with a long staff, right? You're catching it, hitting it, and it moves, okay? There's certain ways to do that, and there's certain timing that has to happen, right? There's also a certain weight and size ratio. Like if I have, toothpick size arms relative to this guy's, if his arms are as big as my thighs, then I'm not even going to imagine that I could move him, right? That's just delusional, right? So the other way, right? So this is koto, kuki shinden, that kind of stuff, right? Okay. The receiving stuff, that uke nagash, the receiving arm and all that kind of stuff way back, right? It's in gyoko and it's in koto and stuff like that, but it's heavy into gagi yoshin, shinden, fudo, those kind of things, right? In this case, right, The second version is to make him move. Okay, make him move. This usually involves Kyusho, right? Sensitive points. Don't use the term pressure points. It's wrong. Okay, pressure points are one type of Kyusho, right? We make him move. Okay, so it's like the Gyoko-ryu, this little strike here that hits Hoshi. Okay, so I hit it, causes pain, and it causes a reflexive action. I didn't move him. I caused pain in a way that his neurosystem, right, made him pull that. Okay, so I can either physically move him, bam, knock him out of the way, or I can hit him in a certain place that the pain reflex or whatever causes him to move, right? So my guys that are going through Mod 2, we teach you all these, right? Okay, we teach you the receiving arm. We teach you how to move him. We teach you how to make him move, that kind of stuff. We typically stay away from uchidome, the blocking thing, until farther up, because I don't want my guys to confuse this with what they think they've seen in karate, because inevitably it's going to make them lock themselves down. 9 out of 10 people are going to lock themselves down. So we want to teach them freedom of movement first. Then later, when they have more body control and body awareness, then they can work on ukedome, because the primary is barricade and solid form, but I can still move freely. I can still do what uke nagash allows for, right? A continuity of movement. All of these things, right, can go back and be called uke nagash, because nagash implies flow. It implies continuity of movement, right? Free flow. One of the translations is to run through, to continue running, right? It implies non-impeding resistance, right? So if we don't have that piece down, then we're just getting out of the way and punching, or we're just getting out of the way, or we're not getting out of the way and we're just blocking, or we're doing the bullshit soft touch kind of stuff, right? Not that it's bullshit. It's good at certain levels of training and to work on certain concepts. But if that's all that somebody's doing, then let me be nice about this. I wish them well, okay? And I hope that they never encounter somebody who's going to show them the error of their ways permanently, right? Anyway, all right, so we have that moving them, all that kind of stuff, right? Again, right on time here. So we're gonna look at all three ways on Friday with physical form examples and things like that, so that we can get our head wrapped around this broader concept, but the three different aspects, right? And stop thinking about the big goal is to lead the elephant out of the room, so that we're not lumping everything into one category, right? We need to change how we define things, and we need to recognize that these are three different tactical things, right? Tactical approaches, right? To the defend and the disrupt stage, because they all, defending is just getting out of the way, right? You prevented him from making contact, or you wrote it off, right? So it's defend to disrupt, right? So how the disruption occurs is different across uke nagash, ukedome, ukiuchi, okay? And if we don't know that, then we're going to miss opportunities, okay? And if we miss opportunities, we'll have less options. If we have less options, we better hope that whatever comes at us doesn't require the tool we don't have in our toolbox. All right, that's it for this week. Again, I apologize for being so much. I mean, there's so much that I pretty much read off my friggin' notes. Anyway, again, if you want to come in on the training, it's $4.99. If you're not in my Ninpo Masterclass program, those guys pay a monthly continuity tuition kind of thing, and they get 2 of those classes a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. They get the recordings for things, and right now there's still over $1,000 worth of bonus training that's in that program. If you go to that link right there, go to that page, right under each of the buttons to sign up a la carte, they're black buttons, right? It says $4.99, whatever, right? Right under that, there is a blue link or something like that that will direct you to a page that outlines the Ninpo Masterclass thing. We'd love to have you, but at the same time, you do you, okay? I'm here to help those who want the help, and that's pretty much where it goes, right? So hopefully this was of help. take it, use it for however you're going to do, unless you're going to plagiarize it and claim it as your own, in which case then you get to talk to my little Jewish lawyer. Anyway, so that's it. That's all I got. Again, this is Daishihan Miller from Warrior Concepts International, Bujinkan Mori no Tora Dojo, Whiteboard Wednesday. I'll talk to you next time. Be safe, train hard, have a great week or weekend, wherever you happen to be. Right? Talk to you.